Hi everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to come and learn about cybersecurity awareness. My name is Winston Lewin-Smith and I'm a senior consultant in NAB's Group Security Advisory and Awareness team. I'd like to kick off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and state that we are proud to be part of a land with the world's oldest living culture. Now, let me start by posing everybody a question. How many of us know somebody who's been impacted by a data breach or scam, probably recently? Unfortunately, I can put up my hand too. And so today, the purpose is to walk everyone through some of the common threats that we face into and give everybody some insights in how we can safeguard ourselves from the threats that seem to be growing and growing every single day. I think it's important also to understand that I don't want to come across as being like the harbinger of doom or anything like that. I just want everybody to be really aware of all the scams and threats and all the things that are happening so you can be better prepared as well. Some people can think that cybersecurity is intimidating or scary, and it doesn't need to be that way. So hopefully we can walk through some simple things that you can do to keep yourself and your family safer. Now, let me give you a little bit of context about NAB's security capability and where I fit in as well. So as I said, I'm in the Security Advisory and Awareness team. So my role is actually to help educate customers and colleagues about the current threats and how we can stay safe from them. Now, you might not be surprised to know that as a Big Four bank, NAB has a pretty large security team. What might surprise you, though, is how closely we actually work with all the other big banks and how much we all coordinate together to make sure we can all protect Australia, our economy, and the people and our customers and everyone's data as well. But here's the thing. The security teams are often very full of super technical people that put a lot of technical rules in place. And technical rules are fantastic because they go ding when something happens. But see, once an email hits our inbox, or once we receive a phone call or an SMS, then we become our last line of defense. And so that's where I come in, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I want to educate people how they can identify when something like that is happening and protect themselves. Because once it hits us, it's up to us to know how to make a difference for ourselves. Now, as I said, I don't want to appear like I'm coming across doom and gloom, but what I do want from this presentation is this. You might recognize some of the things I'm talking about. Hopefully we can dive a little bit deeper in. If you do have a question, feel free to jump onto one of our live webinars. You can see the details for those at nab.com.au/security. And if you check out those live webinars, you can ask your questions in those presentations as well. So if you can walk away from this presentation with an aha moment, I feel like my work is done. And if that aha moment protects you and your family, then I've got a even bigger smile on my face as well. So moving along, how bad is the problem really? Well, you can see here that it is a big problem in Australia, and it is also a big problem around the world. That B there with the 33B is $33 billion of self-reported losses in the ACSC, or Australian Cybersecurity Centre's report for the year of 2021. $88,000, give or take, is the amount of self-reported average loss for a medium business, and a report is actually made every 7 minutes to report cyber. Now, I'm sharing this with you not only so you can understand the financial impact that it has, but also to stress the other impacts that can come from these sorts of attacks. And that can be psychological and well-being, right? That can also be loss of identity, which can lead to reputational damage, loss of job opportunities. There is so many far-reaching impacts that can occur from cybercrime and scams. So hopefully today we can give you some moments so that doesn't happen to you. What happens here is this though. 82% of all breaches involve a human element. And so this is why it's important to know and share what you learned today with the people around you. Maybe I can inspire some dinner time conversation as well. So who are the cyber criminals? What's that common image that is presented to us by the media or in movies as well, etc., right? What are those common images? It's this. This is what a lot of the time cybercrime looks like, and I'm doing talking marks there, right? It's that lone wolf scenario where a person wearing a hoodie, maybe they're in their mother's basement with pizza boxes and Red Bull cans strewn behind them. And maybe it's even comforting for some people because perhaps that lone wolf, well, they're too busy hacking some big organization to worry about little old me. Unfortunately, the reality is a lot more sophisticated than that. It actually looks like this, and this is a call center. Now, one thing, this is just a normal call center image. It's not an actual cybercrime den, so please don't pick up the phone and call someone there if you recognize them and say, Winston called you a hacker, because I'm not. It's just an image, but I do want it to demonstrate and stress to you the sophistication that we at NAB face into every day, but also everyone in Australia and the world faces into every day. They're run like normal businesses. They have KPIs, they are profit-driven, they have sales targets and design teams and tea rooms. In fact, it's even been reported that some of them have graduate programs targeting high-performing students straight out of university. What's also important to consider is this. To cyber criminals, you and I are just business prospects. There is no passion or consideration for our personal circumstances. And they do this because it's profitable to them. It's been estimated that the cybercrime now is worth more than the international drug trade. So unfortunately, it is going to continue. So let's talk a little bit about the statistics, because it's easy to have a perception that only one demographic or group of people is targeted or vulnerable to scams and crime attacks. And often that's when I ask people, they say, oh, it might be seniors or people who are not so good with computers. Unfortunately, the stats do paint a different picture. It shows that all age groups are vulnerable to scams. Both men and women, all groups are targeted, and the financial losses are sustained by everybody. So let's look at the ways that they're targeting us most regularly. These are the scam trends from 2022 in the ACCC Targeting Scams Report 2023. As you can see, investment scams are by far the largest, but there are a lot of other scam types that we're going to cover a little bit about today: remote access scams, payment redirection or invoice scams, romance scams, and phishing scams as well. Now, you can draw your own conclusions from this slide, and remember that no dollar value can be put on the emotional and psychological devastation that these sorts of scams can cause. So how are they interacting with us? Let's have a conversation. One of the key ways that they target us is via email. If anyone here has an email address, it's incredibly likely that you've received some sort of a phishing message to your email address. Now, what is phishing? I don't mean by in a boat. I mean when criminals are targeting us with emails pretending to be from some sort of an organization, be it a service provider, a bank, or any other organization, government, etc. And they're pretending to be them and trying to influence us to give away some sort of information, our passwords, or access to something. Now, we'll start with this example. It's a NAB example because, I'm from NAB, but I just want to walk through this. And if you received this email and spent the time, it's very possible that you would identify this as a phishing message. And so if we walk through what's going on here, we can have a little brief discussion about it. The first is that at least they've gone far enough to use the correct branding and be reasonably well written. Often, grammatical and spelling errors are a great giveaway of phishing messages, and also with the advent of artificial intelligence technologies, a lot of emails might be better crafted because they've used a artificial intelligence to actually create the language in the email. But let's walk through some of the red flags. First of all, it's not from a NAB email address. That is an absolute red flag. They will often change the from name to appear like something legitimate, but the from email address is often not from a legitimate email address. There's no greeting. So NAB, we use your name when we send you a message. And I want you to have a think about how you're also messaging other people in your life as well. If you happen to operate a business or you're emailing people, we like to call someone by their name, but the scammers don't always know everyone's name. They might not even know if you bank with NAB. So they send this email out to millions of people, hoping that some of it sticks. But if we continue through this, you can see that they're going to request some sort of personal information, and then there's an urgent request. And just to spend a moment on this, because I educate people about these things every single day. And even when I receive a well-crafted SMS or a well-crafted phone call or email, sometimes if I'm expecting post or I'm expecting something, even I can get that emotional response where they've sparked some kind of fear or reward if I'm expecting a package, and I can almost click on the link. But so if I can get that emotional response, I know lots of people can get that emotional response, and that is a great time to stop, because even if it's a legitimate message, it's not a bad thing to pause and think before you act. And if you can do that, it's going to give you that extra time to assess whether something is legitimate or not. And then they want to try and give you a link to click on because they want to redirect you somewhere dodgy. And in this case, there's no real NAB sign-off as well. And all of these red flags might not all be there. They might come in different patterns, but it is some great things to pay attention to when receiving an email. Expert tip here, hover before you click. What does that mean? That means put your mouse or thumb on the link, or you put your mouse over the link, and either at the mouse or the little gray bar at the bottom of the screen, you can see where the actual address is taking you to. And if it doesn't look legitimate, then how about you take the next, you don't click on the link at all, and you can reconsider how you're going to approach this by verifying or going directly to the website without clicking. Now, if you did click on the link, this is what the page would open up to. And if you bank with NAB, you would recognize that this is very similar to our official NAB internet banking page. And what's also important is that this page even has an HTTP or security lock, right? What's important to note is that that is no guarantee that a page isn't run by a scammer. It just might mean that you have a direct secure link to the scammer hosted web page. Furthermore, it's important to note that the scammers do change the background images to match our latest branding and other service providers as well. This goes to show you how much they are actually watching as we change, and they adapt what they do as well. So how do we know that this is not a NAB site? Well, take a look at the URL at the top there. It says ib-nab-secure.com. It's not nab.com.au. So there is a strong likelihood that this is a dodgy website. In this case, they're looking to harvest your bank login information, username and password. It might ask for some sort of a code afterwards, or it might ask for some sort of license or other information as well. So in this case, the key takeaway here is to avoid going to these sorts of sites, you can just open your web browser. That could be Edge, Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, etc. And just type in nab.com.au. And then you'll know you're coming to the NAB website. Let's talk a little bit about SMS phishing, because SMSs were about a third of scam attacks in 2022 began with an SMS. And so it's important to understand a little bit about SMS phishing, because one of the things is that spoofing has been a big game changer. Now, what is spoofing, you ask? Spoofing is where somebody can use technology to change the way a number appears in our telephone. So, for example, this is actually a useful and legal technology that a lot of companies use to be able to make a phone call or SMS appear to come from a particular phone number or name. Unfortunately, scammers abuse this technology to also spoof or impersonate legitimate organizations so the messages can appear to be coming from somebody else. Let me give you an example. If you have a look in this example here, you can see that these SMSs here, you can see that there are 3 legitimate messages from NAB, and you can see it's all the same sorts of things. We're addressing the person by name, having a legitimate sign-off, and then there is an SMS here that is not a legitimate message. But unfortunately, they've changed the name to appear from NAB, and our smartphones are a little too smart for their own good. And what happens then? The smartphone goes, well, I recognize that person. I'm going to put that SMS at the bottom of that chain of messages. So please note, and receiving a message like this does not mean that an organization has been breached or hacked. It just means that someone has abused a technology to get that message into our phones. These things can come in all sorts of different forms. They can also come saying, please call this phone number. They could come from different organizations. Yes, we have worked with telecommunication companies to reduce this from happening, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. So every SMS needs to be assessed of its own merit. And you can always call a number back on a publicly listed or known phone number to verify something if you receive any kind of message. So if you did click on the link in the text, sometimes it might redirect you to a page that looks like this. It could be a NAB internet banking login page, or perhaps they're requesting credit card details or other personal information as well. In this real example our team picked up, they're not only going after the money in someone's bank account, but they're going after someone's identity as well. So there's a reason for this, because a driver's license in particular is considered the golden ticket for identity theft, and the driver's license can be used to change passwords, access potential accounts, maybe apply for loans, and so it can be absolutely devastating. So please be super careful about where you give your information out online. Another way that cyber criminals contact us super regularly now, and I'm sure many people have experienced this if you have a phone, is this, right? As phone calls where they're pretending to be from somebody, trying to scare us into giving them access to our computer or device, or perhaps giving them some sort of information. And often they might even ask us to give us a code they're going to send to our phone, which we would never give out, especially when this SMS says something like, never give this code to anybody. So unfortunately, again, they can still spoof the number. And it's important to understand that when they impersonate a phone number, it's a one-way thing. So if they impersonated NAB's real phone number, for example, but you called it back, you would actually get through back to NAB. But we still suggest always calling on a known or publicly listed phone number. So scammers use robocalls to make technology to make thousands of calls to people every single day, pretending to be from all sorts of different organizations. Please remember that NAB would never ask you to share your screen with them or download or install software, right? You're not going to get a call from the ATO saying that there is an arrest warrant out for you as well. You know, and the NBN isn't going to call you, and they're not going to, well, they might call us, but they're not going to ask us, tell us that our internet has been hacked and that they need to access our computers. Right? As a business, sometimes businesses receive calls from people pretending to be an employee, asking even to change employee payment details and things like that as well. So what happens with all of this information? So the scammers and criminals will often steal identities or banking details or credit card information or login information, and sometimes they go on to use this with their own evil or nefarious means, and other times they're going to go on to sell it or offer it to other people as well. Now, many of us have probably heard about the dark web these days. Now, the dark web is like a bustling underground marketplace where cyber criminals love to hang out because of its anonymity, I can get that word out, anonymity, and their ability to all negotiate and talk with each other in highly vetted underground forums. Now, the dark web is not somewhere that you're going to stumble across. It requires specialized software to access, but it is a sophisticated marketplace where people and all the criminals are able to engage with each other and sell information to each other. And it's important to understand that it is very, very sophisticated these days. And if I were to ask you, how much do you think an identity is worth, be that a password, a passport, a scanned passport, or maybe identity such as just name, address, phone number, date of birth, and so on, people give me all sorts of numbers. I get numbers like $10, $1,000, $500, sometimes even more. Unfortunately, the reality is a lot worse than that. You can see here a picture taken from the dark web on a site that has since been shut down, that this was 100 what's called Australian fulls, which was name, date of birth, phone number, etc., address, etc., and that was for $200 US. Often these transactions are made in some kind of cryptocurrency. Now you can look at this website here and it's easy to think this is like an early stage of many of the buying platforms, you know, and trading platforms we get on these days like eBay or Amazon, but it's not. But it still is sophisticated enough that there are vendor trust ratings, there are reviews, Sometimes they've even offered guarantees on the products that they sell to each other. And so please note that it is a sophisticated underground marketplace that all of these cyber criminals are meeting and negotiating with each other in. It has also started to blur the lines. And what do I mean by that? It means that whereas I spoke about the lone wolf before and then the organized cybercrime gangs, there are also nation state actors, organized crime, hacktivists, terrorist groups, the lone wolf, etc. And they're all in this melting pot marketplace where they're able to share their wares with each other. And it's not just identity or things they've stolen. They also offer each other services. So you can see here an example of some ransomware that was available for sale on the dark web as well. In this case, it was ransomware. It has made it as accessible as ever. And in the past, where hacking an organization, deploying ransomware, stealing data might have required a sophisticated organization. Now, entry-level actors are getting involved as well because they can take advantage of other things that are available to them in the dark web. So let's talk a little bit about other scam types. And we're going to start with investment scams. Investment scams are where you're deceived by offers that are too good to be true. Often they are low risk, high return, operated by very convincing websites that might be led to by ads on search platforms. They've got slick talking stock brokers making out of the blue contact with you. Maybe they contact people through social media. Maybe it could be someone through a romance scam redirecting, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And here's the thing, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is, and you need to be suspicious and take the appropriate steps. Sometimes they're going to pretend to be from an organization that exists. In this example, there were scammers who were pretending to be from NAB, and they had a 30-page prospectus and were taking people through a long buying journey to try and get them to invest significant amounts of money. $1.5 billion was lost to investment scams in 2022. So please check that the person you're talking to is listed through the Australian Financial Services license. They have Australian credit license. Check with the Australian government's Money Smart list of companies. Be wary of investment seminars that offer that free advice and make big claims with minimal details. Never provide your internet banking details to a third party, and do your research before making any decisions, and just make sure you allow yourself a cooling off period. Remember, you can always discuss, and we recommend discussing these sorts of opportunities with a friend or family member, maybe an accountant, to get an objective opinion as well. And again, please reach out directly to a company. So if it's a large organization like NAB, directly through a publicly listed phone number, just to verify if somebody has contacted you about an investment opportunity. Let's talk a little bit about romance scams. Who's seen The Tinder Swindler? If not, I do suggest checking it out. It is on Netflix. It gives a real story of a huge romance scam. It's quite devastating. Unfortunately, scammers like to take advantage of people looking for love. And traditionally, these sorts of things start through dating websites, online friendships that lead to romantic relationships, sometimes through social media or other apps. And a person pretends to be a prospective lover or prospective companion of a person. Now, don't get me wrong. Many great relationships, long-lasting relationships with wonderful families have started online. I've got many friends who've got great relationships that have started online, and there are plenty of happily ever after relationships coming. But scams still exist, and they can be the most terrible kind because they act on a person's heart. A scammer might create a fake profile. They often use they catfish, which means they're pretending to be somebody else. It's another great show if you want to check it out. And they often say things like, I'm based overseas for work, I can't do video calls, maybe the internet is bad. They often pretend to be well-regarded professions like a doctor, diplomat, working in the armed forces. And then they, over time, build relationship and build trust. It could even be for weeks or months or years, right? Then they might ask for a small amount of money. And then maybe that they ask for a bit more money and say it's for medical bills, or their mother is unwell, or they've made a big sale and they just don't have the money yet, or they want to come visit you, but they can't afford it. And these things happen. okay? And they start small and maybe they build it up, and the requests start to escalate. They can become very demanding. If this happens, cease contact with the person and seek assistance. Now, here's the thing. It can be difficult to convince a friend or relative that they've been involved in a romance scam. Sometimes people refuse to believe it because they are truly in love with this person. And so if you can, you get in touch with ID Care, which is Australia and New Zealand's counselling and support service. You know, for people impacted by scams, they can refer you to people that provide those sorts of services as well. Identity theft and cybercrime. ID Care is a free, not-for-profit service as well. Please check it out. You can find more information on ScamWatch as well. You can speak to police about your concerns. They might be able to assist with a welfare check or conversations, or maybe you even need to organize a group intervention with friends and family so you can share your concerns and suspicions together. So here are the tips. Never send some money to someone you haven't met in person. You can check photos by dropping them into a search and doing what's called a reverse image search to see if they are legitimate or if that image has been used elsewhere. Be wary of requests for money. Search for somebody's name to check, but many scammers do set up what look like legitimate profiles as well. And never allow someone else to process payments through your account. Often, romance scammers will use people that they've scammed as what's called a mule to transfer money, maybe money laundering or other things, or to get money out of a country from other scams as well. Let's continue. Let's talk a little bit about remote access scams. This is where a scammer will call pretending to be from a service provider. Often it could be someone like Telstra, NBN, Microsoft, or even NAB, and convince you, and they try to convince you to install an application or give you access to their computer or phone. They might say that there's something wrong with your computer. They might say that somebody has hacked into your internet and is using it to do illegal things, and they might need to fix an issue. Excuse me. Sometimes they might say they need to get in because there's a virus on your computer and there's been fraud on your bank accounts as well. Sometimes they'll even ask for banking details or get you to log into the internet. And even often, and this is with all the scams, a lot of times they'll convince somebody to go into a branch and even lie to the teller. If somebody is coaching you on what to say to a bank teller, that is a massive red flag as well. Other times, they will get on the phone with people and maybe they won't actually get access, but they will say something like, and I received a call like this recently, they'll say something like, oh, there's been fraud on your account. We're just going to send you a code so we can verify this is okay. But what they're trying to do is access the account. And so please be aware of that. Never provide remote access to your phone. NAB will never ask you to download software to fix a fraud issue, nor will we ask you to share your screens, and always read your security messages, okay? We'll tell you if you can't share it. Pay attention if a message says, do not share this with anyone. Please don't share it with anyone if it says that. So let's talk a little bit about invoice scams. And there are two sides to this. The first is this sort of an invoice scam where we might be settling on something, maybe we've bought something, or maybe it's just a paying somebody that we know, could be a tradie, could be an accountant, or it could be for something larger, could be property, car, etc. And criminals are targeting business emails now, and then they're intercepting them and changing the payment details. So while this looks like a pretty normal sort of email that you might receive from somebody when settling something, it might be followed up from the same email address, even in the same chain, saying, oh, sorry, here's some new bank details. Unfortunately, people are notoriously not looking at email addresses and not checking what's going on. Please make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on here. Because if there's a change, even an email from somebody we know and trust might not be real. And so it is super important for any sort of transaction, especially any amount that is important to you. I would always contact the organization. How? Through a known or public listed phone number to make sure, okay? When we buy something that is over a certain amount of money, I'm going to ring the organization and check, even if I'm expecting the email from them, because maybe their emails have been compromised. From a business perspective, Businesses or people's emails are also being compromised. And what happens here is that many organizations have their email in the cloud. Many people have their emails in the cloud as well. Remember, Gmail, Ymail, Hotmail, Outlook Mail, that's all in the cloud, right, on the internet. And what that means is that if the way you access that is just through a username and password, and somebody clicks a link in an email and gives away their username and password to their email account, then they are giving away the keys to their empire. Just think what somebody can access if they have access to your username and password or all of your emails. That's intellectual property, negotiations, customer information, vendor information. This is from a business perspective for a moment here, but it's really important to talk about because we can be on both ends of this, and maybe our own personal emails we want to protect as well. And so it's super important to make sure that we are aware of phishing messages, and also to have multi-factor authentication turned on our accounts. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that later, but multi-factor authentication is where something you know is a username and password, and then something we have could be a phone or a token or something that we can receive a code to that we can then use to log in. We also suggest using a PayID. Now, PayID is a great technology. You can check it out at nab.com.au/PayID. Highly recommend using it. It's fantastic because you can tie a bank account to an email address, phone number, and for businesses, an ABN or business identifier, right? And that way, and I use this when I'm out to dinner with people, I can just send them their money to their phone and the money turns up straight away. But what's great is that when I click to send the money, it pops up a message saying, are you sending it to their name? And that is a fantastic extra level of security that you can implement just to raise your security level as well. So let's talk a little bit about social media scams. Of course, scammers move with the times, right? Social media is an amazing connector, but scammers are using it as well to get in contact with people for all of the different types of scams that we're talking about. So it's important to just stay hyper vigilant. And it also happens sometimes, and this happened to me recently, where I received a message from someone that I knew who was already a friend. And the message read like this. It said, "Hi, can you help me, please?" Now, they're my friend. I said, sure. But what happened next was I'm just been locked out of my account and I need to get a code. It's going to send to you. Can you tell me the code? Now, my alarm bells immediately started ringing because I'm like, how are you locked out of your account? And so I sent a message to their brother and I said, just checking this. And they said, no, their account has been compromised, right? That code that they would have sent to me would have actually been a code to access my account, okay? So it can again come from people we know, but also in other ways. So while social media can be used to create all of the other scam types, there's also one called Hi Mum that's been going around, or Hi Child, I suppose is another way to put it. It starts like this, right? It says, "Hi Mum, I lost my phone. Can you just delete the number and save this one for me?" And then they're going to ask for some money, right? And a lot of people are receiving that and thinking it's their child instead of verifying with their child or verifying with the person that sent that. In reverse, sometimes it's the opposite. People have said, "Hi, child, I'm just stuck at the counter here. I've forgotten my card. Can you send me some money so I can pay for the groceries?" Right? So please stay alert to these red flags. Unsolicited contact, random group messages or comments from people that you might not know, comments enticing you to invest in something. They could be trying to send reset codes, someone starting to start a relationship, or quizzes designed to steal your personal information as well. So finally, let's move on to malicious software, malware. Again, if you have a look at this example here, while this one is not actually from Energy Australia, it could come from any service provider. But in this case, it's all the same sorts of red flags, but they're also trying to get us to do something different. They're trying to get us to download and install something. In this case, they've elevated the price of the bill and they want to get us to download this invoice and run it or open it, hoping maybe we don't pay attention to the type of file that we've downloaded. Now, I don't know about you, but if I received a bill like this, I'm probably going to want to know why it's expensive. but in this case, they're trying to trick us. Again, all the same sorts of red flags we spoke about earlier. But what's going to happen? Malware stands for malicious software. And that's something that can be installed on our computers that might install a keylogger that tracks what we type with our keyboard. It could install and connect us to what's called a bot network, where our computer is then used to attack other computers. It could infest our emails, or it could do something like this, which is called ransomware. Now, ransomware is designed with criminals. Sometimes they're trying to steal the data, but what it does is it gets into our computer and locks up the files by encrypting them. Sometimes it'll spread to other computers or hard drives that are connected to our computer. And then they pop up a thing saying, if you don't pay us, we're not going to let you unlock your files. The goal is to stop us being able to access the files that are important to us. And when we think about it, our computers can have a lot of really important files on it. It might be important photos. It might be all sorts of important things to us. Here's the thing. Here's a warning, please. We recommend you do not pay the ransom if affected by ransomware. There's no guarantee that paying a ransom will fix a computer. It's been stated that people who do get hit with ransomware are hit again by ransomware, and so it could make you vulnerable to further attacks. So restore your files from a backup. Please back up your important files and detach it from your computer and seek some technical advice. If you are affected by ransomware, immediately disconnect from the internet. Stop the ransomware running using your task manager. There is also a guide on the Australian Cyber Security Centre, or ACSC, at cyber.gov.au that you can look at in terms of ransomware and what to do if you're held to ransom. But it's not all bad news. Look at this gentleman. Isn't he a happy fella? Do you know why? Because he's doing the basic hygiene steps that can stop such a majority of attacks. The cyber criminals hold us in very low regard. And for the same reason that we lock our house and we lock our car, it's to stop those crimes of opportunity. And so we want to make the cyber criminals' job that much harder for them. Is everything perfect? Absolutely not. But if we can stop the vast majority, we can create a much harder environment altogether for the cyber criminals as well. So let's talk about these easy steps that we can take. First of all, passwords. And I'm sorry, I have to talk about passwords. I don't think any of us actually like passwords, right? They're cumbersome. We expect it to be in lots of different character sets included, expected to have different ones for every account, and that can be cumbersome and difficult to have a unique one for every account. But there are ways you can make that easier, and I'll talk about that in a moment. First of all, let's talk about the top worst passwords. Now, I hope that nobody watching this video has any of these passwords. And if you do, I recommend you change it immediately. You can pause this video, go and change those passwords, and come back and continue watching this video. That's how important I think it is. So every year, Splash Data is a company. They get the top 10 million worst passwords, and 5 million of them were these. I really hope nobody has any of these passwords. You might laugh because it's silly. I think the only thing worse than maybe having these passwords is writing them on a sticky note and keeping it on your monitor because maybe you can't remember it. Please, my recommendation is this. All of these passwords can be hacked in like less than a second. And so it's really important to have unique passwords. And how do we do that? Use a password management tool. There are quite a few available out there. There are some free options. There are some paid options. You can do a search to find a password management tool that's appropriate for you. There are plenty of reputable companies, and it's like a master book of passwords. How does it work? You have one very secure, strong key passphrase or password to access it. Please make sure that your master password is super secure. And you can use that master password to keep a book of all your other passwords. I don't even know most of my passwords anymore because I use a password safe. My children use password safe, so they don't even know most of their passwords because they don't need to. And here's the good thing. Someone said to me recently, they said, why do I need to use a password safe if I have a great super secure password? Well, think about it this way. If we use a single password and we use that password, let's say on some site where we got a recipe one time, and unfortunately that website didn't have the best security, what do we do? What happens? Unfortunately, maybe that site gets hacked and our password is now in the wild in a data breach. And if we've used the same password for everything, what happens then? That password gets tested against all the different services, and suddenly the cyber criminals have access to a lot more than if they were just able to breach one site. This is why we recommend using a password management tool. You can have a passphrase. Password management tools also recognize what site you're on. So if a scammer sent you to another site, the password tool shouldn't recommend that you use your password on that site. They can let you know if a password's been in a data breach, and so on. That's my recommendation for passwords. Please search password management tool. So what else? Well, be curious and trust your instincts, okay? You can check if your email has been involved in a data breach at haveibeenpwned.com. You can also use reverse image searches if you want to check it on a person. You can check websites like VirusTotal to see if something is legitimate. There are websites you can use. Google has what's called a URL scan that actually checks to see if a website is, puts it on a rating of safety. And when you use your card, please, cover with your hand when you use your PIN, so people can't watch you use your PIN. Regularly check your account transactions, and if you discover a card has been lost or stolen, or there are transactions you don't recognize, report it as soon as possible. Finally, and also, not finally, also keep your operating systems and virus checker up to date. If you don't have a virus checker, you can check. We have a free 6-month trial to a virus checker available at nab.com.au/software. Please make sure that you do keep your software up to date. Operating systems like Windows and Mac and all these things, and your Android and iOS regularly offer updates. Please install them when you see them. And also just be wary of social media. And that means that when you put something on the internet, it's out there. So be careful what you put on and share on social media. Now, we already spoke about this, so I'll cover it really quickly. Make sure multi-factor authentication is turned on for anything important. You can see some more details for that at cyber.gov.au/MFA. Turn it on for email accounts, turn it on for everything that you can, and that will help add a layer of security to your services as well. Security is a layered approach. The more you have in place, the harder it is for the criminals. Is everything perfect? Not necessarily. It's important to have multiple layers as well, okay? I've done this for myself, and it's important for you to do it too. Now, let's talk really quickly about what to do if you've been exposed or you've had information exposed. First of all, understand what has been exposed. Find out from the organization what's been exposed. Was it just name? Was it name, address, phone number? Was date of birth? Any identity document details, and so on. That way you know what you can do for number 2, which is what action do you need to take? Replace identity documents? Do you need to change passwords? Make sure multi-factor authentication is turned on, because now maybe criminals have an easier way to try and access things. Be on the lookout for suspicious messages or calls. Maybe they're going to use a targeted attack because they know something about us. Consider credit monitoring services. Also be aware that if you do put a credit lock on, that can impact if you are applying for credit. So just be aware of that too. And then keep an eye on your bank accounts, right? Notify us if you see anything suspicious. ID Care has an excellent resource on what to do if your information has been exposed in a breach. Check out idcare.org for that too. And reporting. If something does happen, if we're involved in a scam, we see something suspicious, we've been involved in fraud, it is super important to notify us as soon as possible. Why? Criminals are motivated to move money that they steal very, very quickly. And so the sooner you can talk to us, the sooner we can, if we need to talk to other banks to be able to coordinate locks on accounts, do anything to try and recover the money, it is super important to contact us straight away. Remember, it's not always possible to recover scammed funds. And so the faster you can contact us, the more likely we are to be able to help you. And these things can take a few weeks to resolve. Of course, if you're not happy with the outcome of the resolution of fraud and scam cases, you can raise it internally with us. And again, even if you're not happy with that, you can still take that to AFCA or the Australian Financial Complaints Authority as well. If you see something from someone pretending to be NAB, please flick it to us. We appreciate it so we can be on the front foot. And when we see things, we put them online so people can actually see that at nab.com.au/security alerts. That's nab.com.au/security alerts as well. And then there's also cyber.gov.au/report. Where to go for more information? nab.com.au/security. There is a ton of articles there, updated alerts, free antivirus software available at nab.com.au/software. And then also, if you've enjoyed what you've seen here today, maybe you have a question, or maybe you would like to see it again or recommend it to somebody else, we also do regular live security webinars for both individuals and businesses there as well. So you can register for one of those and jump on and have a listen to either myself or one of our amazing team doing this presentation live. You can also jump onto cyber.gov.au or scamwatch.gov.au for other further information as well. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to have a listen to this today. I hope you have a wonderful remainder of the day or the evening or the week or month or year or whatever it happens to be. I do hope everybody has enjoyed this and walked away with an aha moment for you. I do ask that you be kind in the comments because my mother's going to watch this as well. But I do appreciate you all taking the time. And if you want to jump onto one of our live webinars and say hi, head to nab.com.au/security, and I look forward to catching you there. Thank you very much.